All right, hello. So in this video, I wanted to see if I could explain how to memorize the unit circle as quickly and painlessly as possible. And so we'll dive right in. I've kind of already drawn out the unit circle here and split up our tick marks in the way I want you to kind of think about this, right? I don't know if you can see these blue ones here, but they're the first and third in each quadrant, and the second in each quadrant is red, right? So that's how I want you to break up these tick marks in your head, right? So our red ones, we'll start with those, right? These go by 45 degrees, right? So 45, up here we have 90, right? And we include the axes when we're doing this counting, right? So 45, 90,
135, 180, 225, 270, and then 315, and then 360.
right? Simple enough, right? Middle tick mark in each quadrant goes by 45 degrees, including the axes, right? Our first and third tick marks in each quadrant, the blue ones, we count by 30, right? So 30, 60, 90, right? Including the axis.
120, 150, 180, including the axis, 210, 240, 70, 300.
And 330. Right, and very often we need to know these measurements in radians as well, right? You could always do the conversions, that might take some time, but we can do a similar thing, right? Starting from the red tick marks, right? These go by pi over 4, right? So this first one is pi over 4. Then to the axis, we have 2 pi over 4, which if you think about it, simplifies to pi over 2. 2 pi over 4 simplifies to pi over 2. So 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4. Next, at 180, we have 4 pi over 4, which simplifies to pi.
5 pi over 4. At 270, we have 6 pi over 4, right? If we divide top and bottom by 2, that becomes 3 pi over 2, right? So 6 pi over 4. And the last one, or second to last, 7 pi over 4.
And then, of course, we have 8 pi over 4. If we simplify that, it's 2 pi, right? That's equivalent to 360 degrees. Right, now we go by the blue tick marks, the 30 degrees, right? And these are going to go by pi over 6, right? So first one is pi over 6. Second one is 2 pi over 6. If we simplify that, right, that's pi over 3. Then 3 pi over 6. If you think about that, that simplifies down to pi over 2, which we have here already.
Then 4 pi over 6, right? Divide both of those by 2, we get 2 pi over 3. 5 pi over 6, right? That simplifies, that's nice. And at 180, we have 6 pi over 6, right? That'll simplify down to pi, as we already have. 7 pi over 6. 8 pi over 6 divided by 2, that's 4 pi over 3. You feel free to skip ahead in this part, but we're almost done. It says 9 pi over 6 next, right? That one, if we divide by 3 on both sides, top and bottom, we get 3 pi over 2. Then 10 pi over 6, right? Divide both of those by 2, we get 5 pi over 3. And then 11 pi over 6.
And then lastly, when we get to 360, we have 12 pi over 6, right? Divide both of those by 2, we get 2 pi, right? Okay, so we already filled in all of our angle measures, right? That's pretty straightforward as far as following the pattern for the blue tick marks, or the first and third in each quadrant, and the red tick marks, or the second one in each quadrant. Right, so similarly, we again want to, when we're filling in our coordinate points, we want to think of breaking up our tick marks in that same fashion, right? And I always like to start with the pi over 4s first, right? Pi over 4 is easy because this one's always just root 2 over 2, right? And then we just change the signs based on what quadrant we're in, right? So just pi over 4, we have root 2 over 2, comma, root 2 over 2. If I go now to quadrant 2, I know the x is going to be negative and the y is going to be positive. So simple as that, right? Negative root 2 over 2, positive root 2 over 2. And we follow that same pattern, right? Third quadrant, both are negative. Negative root 2 over 2, negative root 2 over 2. And then fourth quadrant, positive root 2 over 2, negative root 2 over 2. Right? Then the next part, right, the 30-degree or pi over 6 increments. This is the most challenging part of the entire unit circle, but there's a very easy way to think about this where it's not even rote memorization. It's going to be purely intuition, and that'll even help you recall it later on. If someone asks you, okay, like cosine of 7 pi over 6, you can kind of think of the unit circle in your head and know exactly which measurement that will be, right? And the way I think about it is this, right? If we go up here to this inequality I have, right, we already kind of handled the root 2 over 2 case. But if we simply use the fact that root 3 over 2 is bigger than 1/2, right, which should be intuitive because root 3 is bigger than 1, we can fill in everything here, right? And I'll show you what I mean. If we go to 30 degrees, right, 30 degrees, clearly this x value is much bigger than this y value. So that's how I know that the coordinate point at pi over 6 is root 3 over 2, comma 1/2, right? Because root 3 over 2 is going to be this guy. And that's much bigger than 1/2, which is the y value. Right? And then we can go around and do that for each of these, right? I could pick any point, right? So if we go down to 4 pi over 3, right? This x value is much smaller than this y value, right? And then I adjust the signs as needed for the quadrant, right? So negative 1/2, comma, negative root 3 over 2, because the y value is going to be much longer. Let's go to 7 pi over 6, right? Just the opposite. The x value is much bigger, negative root 3 over 2, than the y value, negative 1/2. We can go through and fill this in, right?
11 pi over 6, positive root 3 over 2, negative 1/2. I encourage you to try this out on your own. So I'll go ahead and fill these in. Right, positive pi over 3, right? X value, much shorter than the y value. Positive 1/2, positive root 3 over 2, negative 1/2, positive root 3 over 2, negative root 3 over 2, positive 1/2.
And last but not least, positive 1/2, negative root 3 over 2. So let me erase the markings I made over here so we can see this better. Make sure to not erase the entire thing, right? And then all we have left are the easy parts, right? Just the axes, right? And we know the coordinate points of the axes. Since this is a unit circle, it just has length of 1, right? So this at 0 degrees or 360 degrees, we have 1, comma 0. Up here at pi over 2, we have 0, comma 1. 180, negative 1, comma 0. 270, 0, comma negative 1. So that's the tool that I use to memorize the unit circle. Again, I think the key is just as long as you get these angle measures down, right, that just follows a simple pattern. And then we can intuitively think about the coordinate points for the increments that go by 30, right? Just thinking about the fact that root 3 over 2 is bigger than 1/2. And I do that every time I get a trigonometry question that requires knowing the unit circle, right? If I hear sine of 11 pi over 6, I think of my unit circle, I go all the way around and I say, okay, the x value is going to be much larger than the y value. So that's going to be root 3 over 2, negative 1/2, right? And a few different practice problems, you'll be getting that in no time. So I hope that was helpful and hope that wasn't too long.